Good morning, everybody. This is Awesomism Book Club, week number 5, and this is our final week in this series. I'm Terrie Curry here in Denver, and I have with me here today Meredith from Maryland, and Enely from Houston, and Louise all the way from Ireland. So, Meredith, can you say hello?
I would love to. Hello, everyone. This again is Meredith from Maryland.
And how about you, Enely?
Hello, this is Enely. I'm very happy to be back with you guys.
Okay, and we've had both Enely and Meredith, but Louise, this is the first time we've had the chance to get Louise here. So, Louise, would you like to say hello?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to be here and looking forward to sharing time with you. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, today already Louise is going to steal the show with her accent. So everybody's doing Louise the whole time. So thank you.
That's exactly right. Okay, so we're covering chapters 9 and 10 today. So just starting with chapter 9, Suzy begins by talking about being versus doing. And she says, "We have feet of clay, and the children seem to live in the clouds. And everyone talks about being in the moment. But in society, there is an oceanic pull to going, going, going." Louise, would you want to comment on that first, this whole topic of being versus doing?
Yes. Suzy talks about before we do anything with all the information she's discussed in the book so far, like all the information, the resources. The question of being is the most important before we go even looking at the resources. So, we're caught up in a society where we're accustomed to just going, 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 doing, ticking off the list, and we just get trapped in that. I suppose in the mind, the left brain, where the internal chatter is going all the time. And she talks about, that we're like Energizer bunnies, basically. And we've lost that art of, going inside and lost the art of quietening the mind. And she talks about resources that are beneficial to helping us quieten the mind. One renowned author is Eckhart Tolle, and his book is The Power of Now, and he's got another one called New Earth, and they're really beneficial to give you information about the power of now and being in the moment. She also talks about Jill Bolt Taylor, and she was a anatomist who had a left hemisphere stroke, and her information is fascinating because you can actually Google it and listen to her information about what it was like to be in the right brain. And she experienced what it's like to be in the senses, a lot of what the autistic children are experiencing, and she gives you an insight into what it's like to be in the right brain. And they're all about being, so she's on about meeting them on that level of being, and it's where the magic lies, and where you meet them being authentic, and you feel, you get that courage and the honesty and the integrity being with them when you meet them on the being level. So it's a great place to start.
And Louise, I know I like at your website or some, you had coined the term wonder beings, and I really love it in my So is that kind of what you'd say? Is that somehow related
to I've always been passionate about children and their potential, and you could always feel that wonder about children, and I suppose when we're being with them we can feel it, but when we come out of the moment we kind of lose that. So it's to go back into the connection within ourselves and be with them, because that's where they're living, so they want us to live on that level as well. So it's cool, it's awesome.
Great, and I'm sure Enely and Meredith have something in this realm to speak about. So, Enely, you want to go first?
Sure. I think it's the relevant portion of this chapter. It's about acknowledging that being comes before doing. Yes, we know we're moms. We want to do many things with our kids. We have a long list of to-dos, and we have things that we want to encourage them to do, plus therapies or other activities. But if the important thing with the kids that has been diagnosed is they don't get to be shoveled around. They don't comply that easily. They fight. they want to be. For them, being is primary. So for them, it doesn't matter what is your to-do list, how many therapies you think you need to do, because they just want to be who they are. And if we go to that level with them, if we connect with them in that being, in that makes them happy, in that interaction that it grows between the parents and the kid when we're in the being, that's when the shift started. That's when the magic appeared. That's when we start recognizing the potential that they have and the potential that we have by being and sharing this life with them.
And then Nellie, is that when you really first started to see the shift in your child or children?
Yes. I definitely, when I started noticing what he likes, what he was interested in. Let's just give this as a little example. When my son was around a year and a half, 2 years, he likes letter, but he wasn't the one to sit down and see the letters in a book because that wasn't interesting for him. But he likes music, and he loved trains. He will be playing with trains the whole time, and he was very visual, not so much a listener, but very, very, very much visual. So when I started noticing those things, when he was being happy, what makes him happy? Playing with his trains made him happy, but still I see his brain was interested on letters. So how can I mix those things together? And I started looking for videos that were with train, that have some music, that have a lot of color, and that's how he learns the letters. Because he was having fun, he was doing something he likes, which was the trains, and at the same time he have that music component that this kid seems to thrive on it. So that's part of what being in the moment, noticing what makes them happy, and using that to your advantage and their advantage to do something together.
And Nellie, I know you have one child diagnosed on the spectrum and another child, your older son, is not. Referring to what you just said, do you notice a difference between the two? Because some of what you said sounds so similar to all children, how they just love when you connect with something they're interested in. But have you seen any difference between the two?
Well, yeah, the difference will be, for example, my first child with Gabriel. Of course, he has interested in trains because he's a boy too, and he will like those things. But I could sit him down and teach him, right? This is A, this is B, this is C, the traditional way. And even though probably wouldn't be fun for him, he will sit down, he will listen, and will repeat and repeat. With Andrew, on the other hand, he will be like, no, sorry, I'm leaving. I'm like, but hey, here, sit down. No, sorry, I'm too busy. I'm going to go with the trains. So, yes, it could apply to any children. I completely agree. But the difference will be usually a traditional kid will sit down when you say sit down. Why? Because I say so. And this is a time where we're going to learn, right? With a kid that is being diagnosed, you can say all of that, and he will be, sorry, gone. I'm just going to do what I want to do. It's in my time, it's what I want to do and how I want to do it. So that's where the being comes into. That's when you see the difference. Of course, if I use the same thing with a traditional kid, he will engage too. Why? Because it's fun. It's fun to learn that way. And probably I would say this evolving on education, this evolving that the kids bring, it's just acknowledging that each kid has something that they enjoy. And if we use that, they thrive. They thrive in anything. And that goes to any kid. But the beauty of the kids that has been diagnosed is they're so strong-willed and they are so in their moment that you either acknowledge that or you fight them all the time. And that's the difference between the two from my point of view and my experience raising both of my kids.
Well, that's great because your experience really going through that explains exactly what Suzy says. In the book, she says, normal kids are adrift in the world of doing and can be trained like little adults, racing and not knowing themselves. But kids with autism never get doing, and they cannot be behavior modified from being to doing. So
they don't give up they don't give up being for doing.
yeah.
They don't trade that. The other kids, we can train them. So they will start getting into the same habit that we have. The first is do. And then when you start asking what do they want, they are like, what? Can I really say what I want? I forgot. I've been doing so much that want or enjoyment, it's not part of that. So, but these kids, the new kids, the kids that are being diagnosed, they don't trade that. They are being first. And that's the most permanent energy that you perceive on them.
Great. Okay, Meredith, you want to jump in? Now you can try an accent if you want to, but
don't tempt me, Terrie. So I love everything that's been said about being, and sometimes I think, I know in my progression of learning how to be present, I overthought it initially. I thought it had to be a state of like blank mind, and it's really not. You still are having your thoughts. It's just you're aware of your thoughts. You're still having your feelings. It's just you're connected to them in a different way, and just have more conscious awareness of what your inner world is like, and then also what the moment is like. And it's almost magical how the thread, it sounds complicated, but really when you're present, everything falls in line with your inner world, the people you're with, and the moment that you're experiencing. And for me, the peace and the ease that comes is amazing, but also like the whole point, you know, when Suzy talks about next steps and switching from being to doing, is connecting with your child, but also learning how to be an expert on raising them. Because as we all know, these kids present us with situations, you know, the teachers don't know what to do, the doctors don't know what to do. You know, I think we all would have stayed in the medical model if it worked, but it didn't. They're just like, I don't know why your child does this, and, you know, good luck with that. And teachers, I don't know how we're ever going to teach them the alphabet. So, you know, we were kind of encouraged strongly to find a new way. So being present for me has been that way of parenting and navigating, you know, medical systems, educational systems, and even, you know, home life. And I'll say just last night my daughter showed a great example of this, where she came at me late, so I was tired, and so it started off badly, I will say. And she's neurotypical. But she'd missed school because she had her wisdom teeth out, and she has a senior high school event today. She was like, do I skip it and catch up on my work? And she was just all wound up about it. And I was like, I don't know. And as soon as I'm in that mode of I don't know, I realize I'm not present. Because frankly, when you're present, you just know. And so I, you know, connected to my body and my breathing, and I just listened for a moment. I enlisted my husband, who is a sturdy, hardy, present guy. And what wound up happening is we just were present with our daughter as she kind of talked through all the anxieties she had about, you know, missing class, all the social anxieties. Well, what if I go? And frankly, by the end of our conversation, she had healed so much, came to so many awarenesses for herself, and she knew what to do. She was like, yeah, I'll go. And she figured out how to work it out with her teachers, and we were just present and gave her hugs and love and connection, and she was able to navigate herself. And the benefit is also she's going to go through this day that she's chosen, and that's going to be wisdom that she gains. Whereas if I had said, no, you have to go to school, or you have to catch up on your homework, if I had given that, because if I were in doing and kept her doing, we would have missed out on so much. So again, I just want to reiterate, like, why are you being present? What are the benefits? You're calm, you're peaceful, you're connected to your child, and frankly, you know what to do, when most of the time it can be pretty confusing.
Well, Meredith,
let me just add something there. By you knowing what to do, you allow her to know what to do.
Yes,
you were trying to fix her. You were trying to fix her situation. You were giving her the space for her to get to their awareness and know what to do. That's the beauty of being present.
and our kids are brilliant. I'm sure you each, my daughter's 18, but at any age, allowing that presence in that space, I'm sure your kids, even as little ones, I've had stories when they're little, they figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, and that leads into one of the next questions I had. In the chapter, Suzy talks about the information and misinformation and how, she gives websites that you can go to get information. But this whole thing about the time it takes to sift through, information, misinformation, plus putting that in then the context of, being present. Like parents might wonder how to navigate the two. And yes, if you could be in the present all the time, but how do you deal with, or any of you, with this whole sifting through, because we're in an information age? Can you address that, Meredith?
Oh my gosh, yes. And frankly, as somebody who used to do and recovering type A, I'm behind some of my books, but I read so many books, and you will find, and I think this is the beauty of our age, you will find conflicting information. You'll find somebody who says vaccines are the best. You'll find somebody else who says vaccines are awful. And, our kids are so unique. You won't find their perfect situation presented in any book. So it really, just from a simplicity standpoint and a way to sort the information, I always, how do I feel when I, even before I open a book, if you hold it, you get a certain feeling. Like, am I drawn to it, or does it feel really heavy? Is it something that I meant to read, but frankly it's been on my bedside for months and I just haven't been able to crack it open? Like, that tells you something. Other things I get and I gobble and I read them in an afternoon. So, and your child too, with books or websites, have them look at it, see how they react, look at their physicality, their body language around it, ask them, how do you feel about this? And if they're excited or interested, that's very telling. It's very telling.
And Enely, how about you?
Yes, I think that definitely the feeling and the perception that you get through the information, it's a great way to sift. As Meredith says before, you find doctors, teachers, specialists that they don't know what to do with your child, or they think they have all the answers, but then you try with your child, it doesn't work. There are no cookie cutters kids. Not everything works with the same kid. They are very, very unique, as Meredith says. And you have to look at your kid and what works for you, what works for your kid, what works for your family. Even when there are no nonverbals. I remember when my youngest, when Andrew was around 4, he wasn't talking yet. And he was doing some swimming classes. And I was just getting tired of taking him to the swimming class because he was fighting. He didn't want to get in the water. And it was a whole thing. And then I said, okay, I'm just going to quit the swimming classes. Let's just do it until the end of this month. And I say, okay, Andrew, you don't want to do swimming anymore? Perfect. We just sign the paper until the end of the month. The next class, he was cheerful. He was happy. He got in the water. I'm like, okay. That's my answer, right? So we're not quitting swimming classes. Let's just keep on going. So they don't necessarily need to tell you with words, but if you let them know what you are doing, if you let them know what's your plan, I'm going to quit swimming class, or I'm going to try this therapy, or let's try this new food. You pretty much, if you really are present and you notice, they'll let you know. They want to do this, they don't want to do this, and that's the part of being present with them, and that's the feedback of information and communication that you get by being present, and that help you sort all this amount of information that we don't know sometimes what to do between the books, the specialists, and what to do. So it's a great tool. I just love it.
Yeah, and Suzy says in the book, pay attention to the ways in which you are being led and the ways in which your child is confirming your direction. So that's beautiful the way you describe it with your children. And then, again, just transcend the compulsion to do and meet the child in the field of being aware of what is and what is up for us. So that's great. You guys are giving great examples. Okay, and then what about the now what? She does give many websites, that kind of thing that can refer to. Any of the three of you want to recommend any websites that work for you? Even though it isn't cookie cutter, might be nice to have some stories or whatever about any information that worked for you. Or any book that you've heard of even recently that where you got new information, or I might just give it, I think the last week we talked about the chapter on pharmaceuticals, but I just might want to reiterate that that at the time the book was written, the statistic for children diagnosed with autism in the United States was 1 in 150. And currently, it has come out that it's 1 in 68. So that's a dramatic increase, even since the book's been written. So, so it's not these children are here to change things, and so there's more and more coming out about this. But
can I just come in there, Terrie, for a minute?
Louise, do you have anything?
Yeah, what I've found is that we look for the answers outside ourselves sometimes. And in the past, that's what I used to do, always looking for the answers outside myself and reading all the books I could get and all the information. But that changed when my kids came along, and they're very highly vibrational, energetic, sensitive children. And, with all the information Suzy has taught in her work, you start to go back into yourself and realize that the answers lie within you, and that your children will reflect back to you what's needed in the moment, and you can feel your way through with the information and be guided. It's all about getting in tune with your intuition as well. So just be led by what works for you.
Okay, another thing I might bring up then, because that going within we have found is so powerful. What about, rather than being isolated with that, what have you three found as far as getting support for, once you're in this internal process? What about connecting so that you don't feel isolated, even though you're getting lots of information from within, you're feeling more comfortable and in the moment with yourself? But is there a piece where it's advantageous to connect? Enely?
I think probably that's the piece I have struggled more. I would say my way of approaching Andrew's diagnosis and approaching the way he is so different that it's hard to relate with people. It's hard to find people to talk about that. The traditional model for autism, it's so square. There are so many rules, so many things that they think they have figured out, but they really haven't. That it gets into what we talked at the beginning of the book about that fear, that guilt. It goes along with all of those energies and emotions that I don't feel comfortable with them. I don't want to be part of them. So with I haven't had much experience with the traditional approaches and getting connected with other parents in that sense. What I have found is just working with energy work, working through a group like Autism, when people are open-minded and they are attuned with themselves and they are open to see potential and possibilities. That has supported me tremendously. Even though not necessarily people have kids and there are no parents of kids, that energy, that support, those ideas, that was really great for me. That helps a lot.
Okay, Meredith, how about you?
Yeah, this is such a good question, Terrie. And in some ways, I will say, when I started connecting and going within, it was a lot less isolating, because frankly, to have a different perspective or to be just looking for the good you know, that was such a radical idea. Like, you have this son with all these issues. What do you mean good? Like, what do you mean accepting him for who he is? And so, frankly, that was more challenging to me. And so it was, you know, when I plugged within, I just tap into something so much larger and more loving and more accepting and easier and inclusive. You know, I felt more connected by going inward, and that brought me to this group. It brought me to other energy workers, and so then there's a camaraderie and a closeness that it far surpasses anything I had before. So for me, it was kind of like this inward, and then having that connection, bringing like-minded people to me, has then felt more connected in a way that we hadn't had before. And my whole family feels it. You know, even if my husband doesn't go within as much and is like, what are you doing there? But, you know, but at least he knows and sees and feels the benefits in our house. So it's only one of you has to be going in.
Louise, what's your experience been in this area?
Yeah, I suppose initially when I started to see that there was something more to my children's, you know, behaviours and what they were reflecting to me, it was isolating at the time. But then as I started to set my intention that, you know, I had the awareness that there was more to my children than the normal perspective, you know, I started to attract people to me that could help me. And Suzy was one of those people. And you just get more comfortable with the information. The more you hear it, the more you experience it, and the more you start to be with it and go within. You know, it sounds simple, but at times it's challenging. But once you get to the awareness that is the essence of the children, you things get easier, and you attract the people that will help you in the future. Yeah. So it does progress nicely. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, as far as chapter 9 goes, I really only have one other thing I want to mention, and that is she mentions, as she's talking about this going within and being rather than doing, she has a little chapter where she mentions if you can stay in the moment, if you can resist that temptation to do something or make a list about what you need to do or think about what you should have done, then that's great. And I just want to say, I was the queen of list making, and this area to me was really wonderful to incorporate. I'm still incorporating it because it's, you know, everyone has to figure out what works for them. But I know I heard the story of a woman in Ossip who has a son, and he kept walking around saying he needed to make his list. He needed to make his list. He kept repeating it and repeating it. And she was driving her crazy, you know. And then finally she realized she was making a list. Once I heard the story, somehow it really did come into me, and I'm really, my list is much shorter. You know, it's like.
Well, I would like to add something there.
Yeah.
To part of the chapter, I would say being doesn't mean sitting down and doing nothing. Being doesn't mean being lazy. You know, the work around the house, who is washing the clothes, that's not gonna get done by magic. You know, sometimes people think that when we say, well, okay, we're just gonna sit and be with our kids, the rest is gonna fall. It's not that what we're talking here. We were talking, yes, we know we have things to do. Do is part of this reality. Yeah. We are in a physical reality. We have things to do. But being is connecting to your kid when you have the time and when you sit down and connect with them. With your neurotypical kids, with your diagnosed kids, just connect with them. Connect with yourself. Connect inside you. Having that moment of connection. But it doesn't mean just lay down in your bed and, okay, everything is going to be done and magically everything is going to disappear. So that's not what we're talking here. I just want to make that up.
Good addition, Enely. Okay, anyone have anything else from chapter 9 before we move on to chapter 10?
I loved also, you know, Suzy talks about giving yourself permission to explore beyond society-imposed boundaries. And I think that's so important And I know for me and my whole process in raising my children, initially I felt awful kind of being outside the bounds of what's normal, and it was sad for me, and I was like working to get us all back onto what the normal page. And then after a while, I was like, you know what? There's some freedom and benefits to being out here. And so
find that freak flag, to find that freak flag.
Exactly. Well, and it was so funny. I recently, I have two brothers with their own families, and we went to my parents' house for an event, and they had a photographer set up in like their family room, and so each family went in to take a family portrait, and there was behind closed doors, and later we look at the pictures. And my brothers and their families, they're sitting on the couch and they're all lined up, and there's the husband and the wife and the kids, and our pictures were like jazz hands, and we're like, like we're just totally having fun. And so I just say, not only give yourself permission and mourn if you need, but it can be fun. It can be a way to express and know yourself more intimately and deeply than you ever have, and then also know and appreciate your child for how unique they are. So it's a little bit frightening, it's a little sad sometimes, but ultimately I think it's joyful, it's important. I think that's how we're teaching educators and teaching doctors and teaching other family members. So give yourself permission and then run with it.
And Meredith, I saw those pictures and I thought, wow, I've never seen any family having that much fun getting a family portrait.
But you don't have to always do it the way it's been done. We just spontaneously did that. So.
Okay. Anybody else? Any more additions to chapter 9? Okay, we'll go on to chapter 10. That kind of leads from what Meredith was saying. It kind of leads right into my first point of chapter 10, and that is Suzy's saying, to shift into asking, does this feel like it's what we want to do, versus this is the way things have to be done. And Enely, do you have any comment on that in relationship to this whole approach to how you approach your child?
Yes, definitely. I think that's a very important question to ask every time you doubt, every time you don't know what to do with your child. Because there are so many rules, as I said before. My kid has a very particular way of eating. For many time I was concerned for the way he was eating, and you can get into that point that, should I do what the doctor says? He shouldn't be eating that. He should be eating these table foods. He should be eating. Do I go to the shoot, or do I look at my kid and see really what he is doing and why he is doing it? And then when I ask that question that Suzy has in the book, should I do what everybody says to be doing, or do I do what works for my kid? And I start looking what it works for him, and I start looking that he doesn't get sick, and I start looking that he's growing, and I start looking that he's perfectly active. Then that allows you that freedom to go outside the box, as Meredith was saying, and do what works for you, even though it's not what everybody would think so. And that question definitely opens you to potential and possibilities, and opens you to receive new information, different information. These kids are different. They are unique, and they work in a magic different way. So it makes sense to me that what it works for the older kids not necessarily will work for them, because they are unique. So if you start asking questions, those unique new ways are going to come to your attention and to your awareness, so you can start working with that.
And Enely, was there any particular, because there's a lot out there about the toxicity of foods, etc., was there anything that your son wanted in the way of eating or diet that completely went against the grain of what your concept of, quote, healthy was?
Well, interesting enough, my kid jar food, baby jar food, for 4 years. 4 years. He didn't want any table food. Nothing at all. No rice, no pasta, no bread, nothing. So that's definitely against the grain. That was, people keep saying, how old is your kid? And I keep like 4. I just didn't say 4 years, but it's 4. And you say, oh, he's eating already jar food. And I was like, yes, okay. So I didn't get too much into that. Even I went to the one pediatrician once, and he said, does he eat vegetable? And in my mind, I was saying, yes, smashed vegetables, like jar vegetables, baby food, but yes, he does eat vegetables. So that definitely was something completely against the grain. It worked for him. At the moment, that's what he requires. That's what his body was asking for. And when he was ready to change, he did. So.
Very good. Meredith, how about you and your child as far as diet? Anything?
Oh my gosh. I love how Nellie said, she's like, oh, he's an interesting eater. And I remember I remember reading these articles about picky eaters and how if you expose them to 15 trials of a food, it's no longer foreign, and then they'll eat it. I think I counted 25 exposures to green beans, and he would eat it. I'd force him. He would gag. He's still to this day gags. He has a physical, like, out, and I was like, okay, I guess that's not happening. So I will say Sam was gluten-free, casein-free from about age 2 to about 7 years old, and in some ways that worked for him. In other ways, he became much more socially aware and feeling, there's already so much about him that kind of separated him from his peers. To have the special gluten-free cupcake, for mom was not cutting it anymore. So so now he eats just about everything. But again, like Enely said, it was on his time. So now I would say he eats a varied, pretty normal diet. But nothing ever came as a result of my pushing it. I will just say that.
Yes.
Yeah, he's kind of teenager age, so so does he kind of hang with the crowd some too? I mean, as far as what he.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
He's making up for lost time on those years with no pizza. I will say that.
No, that's good to know.
Well, interesting enough, my kid doesn't like sugars. So he doesn't eat candies, he doesn't like cupcakes, he just doesn't like. So he goes to a party and people offer him candy, and I'm like, no, he doesn't eat it. So they look at me like, you don't let your kid eat candy? And I'm like, no, he does not like candy. You can offer to him and he will just push it away. So, but people react and then look at me like, oh, what a mean mom you are. You're not letting me have a piece of cake or something. I'm like, okay, whatever. You can try. I don't have a problem. Offer and see. If he wants it, that's fine with me.
Funny.
What about you, Louise? As far as this doing things that you want to do rather than the way things have been done, any examples you can think of?
My kids are the opposite. They love sugary foods and candy and everything they can get their hands on. But you have to limit it to a certain degree. But diet-wise, they have, changed their diets every so often. They just go with the flow with that, because sometimes they might be plain food and it changes every so often. So, and they seem to assimilate easily. So I just let them be. They work out fine with it. Regards to how things are done, I find the kids are not into doing the things the normal way. They're into, pushing the buttons of people and the way the system operates. And I suppose what I do is allow them to have that space when they're with me and at home to do things the way they want to do them, outside of how it should be done outside of the home and when they're in different areas of the outside world. So it's just allowing them to have the freedom to be the way they want to be, even though they might have to conform to certain conditions outside of, in society. So I find that really works well for them, to allow them the space to be the way they want to be.
I can relate, and I'll just tell one funny story as it relates to Sam, because we would go to a restaurant and he would order a drink. He likes seltzer water, and he would order it with 5 lemons. And he was always very specific, 5 lemons, not 4, not 6. And when he first started doing this, I would cringe because who does that? Like, who does that? And it's always so interesting to watch the reaction of the server.
Yes.
Some of them roll with it. Some of them thinks it's funny. Some of them are annoyed. They're just, like, annoyed. But I will tell you, like, the restaurants in our area, so many waiters know him by name because they'll be in the back and they'll hear a drink order for seltzer with 5 lemons. They're like, Sam's here. So it's gotten to be, you know, for me, it was something that was weird and odd and unusual. Like Louise was saying, if you give them some space to work it out, it's amazing how people can respond, and you know, they learn, and it's you know, as long as no one's getting hurt, it's a good thing.
Great. Okay, so moving on to, we talked a little bit about going within, being present, but Suzy goes on to say that the kids are here to change the parent, or you know, really change the parents, and the parents then can, you know, instead of just thinking of it as your own self, your own family, this is really having an impact as you go through this process with your child, you know, learning to be present, learning to let them lead, and in the end, it can really educate doctors and teachers and therapists. So how do you view this? Have you seen, I mean, is this just crazy? Like, is that just kind of pie in the sky? Or have you seen this really, have you guys gotten to see a doctor change, a therapist change, you know, right before your eyes, or even a teacher? Or do you see that really occurring, or is that just something kind of you know, a dream?
No, it does. It's not always easy. And I remember Sam's 3rd grade teacher, and you know, she was very experienced. And at the beginning of the year, we were kind of telling her about some of his issues and his behaviors, and she's like, "I've got this. I've seen everything. I've been doing it for 30 years." Okay, cue about 6 months later, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I have no idea. Who can we call on? What do we do?" And, you know, she wanted to bring in, you know, teams of specialists and psychologists and behavioralists. And to her credit, though, and to the school's credit, you know, we really were able to work together and come up with some really creative solutions. You know, Sam hated fire drills. It would ruin not just that day, it would ruin, like, the week leading up to it, because they had to have one a month, and he'd be stressed out, is it coming? And, you know, when I check in energetically with him, I would really see how it just jangled his whole nervous system. You know, just it disrupted him to the core. And so they came up with a solution where before the alarm was pulled, a teacher would go to him, or an aide, and they'd kind of pull him out, and he'd get escorted out of the building ahead of time. And that's how we dealt with it. And so, but the teachers, you know, they heard of kids who didn't like that and had sensory issues, but Sam was so expressive. They really saw the anxiety it created, you know, what it did to him physically, and so it kind of opened their eyes to how real this is to at least this one child. And, you know, they've since said, we've now had to do the SAM protocol for several other kids, you know, so he was the first, but he wasn't the last. So that's just one small example. But
that's really great. A small but big example. Enely, how about you?
I see changes. I definitely see changes around him, especially school. He's 1st grade. And you can see, as Meredith says, at the beginning, you kind of relate with the teacher and say, this is pretty much how he is. And then they will not necessarily take you seriously until they have to work with him. And they realize that there are some things that are not so easy for them to deal with. And it's not because it's behavior, and it's not because they just want to create a tantrum. It's something that really matters to him. For example, in regards to the food, as we were talking, his aversion wasn't only the food itself when he was youngest. It was he couldn't handle people eating. So when he put something in his mouth, he saw somebody putting in his mouth, he will have the gag reflex. It was something that for him it was hard to handle. So the school working with us and working with him, he started, okay, he needs to go to the cafeteria, everybody's going to the cafeteria, but instead of him sitting down with a table with all the kids where he needs to see all the kids eating, he needs to sit down in a table with the A teacher. And then he's going to be towards their back, so he won't see them. And eventually we turn him so he can start seeing them. And then we move him forward. So they really adjust something, which it was very stressful situation for him until he can accommodate. Eventually, now he sits with the kids. He eats goldfish, which was he wants, so finger food. He won't eat the same food they have. But now he can stay at the table and eat with the friends and have a school. So those little things that you go with them to the school and you have the meetings, you start realizing how teachers change, how the beginning of the year is one more kid, and when you see them at the end of the year, everybody knows Andrew. Everybody say hi about Andrew. Everybody say how sweet he is. So he's just making the environment change. The environment is aware of him. And I'm so thrilled to see that, because we are coming from a society where everything is drive-through. Kids coming in, kids going out, nobody's really connecting, nothing specific. It's just this rush that we're going, that we don't have time to really know the kids we're working with. Guess what? This kid, it's different, and he wants to be noticed. And he wants you to notice that he's different. And he's his own person. He's not the same that came last year. So it's beautiful to see how they connect and how they have to be present for them to connect with them. And that changed the environment, that changed the school, that changed the doctors. So yes, I can really see a ripple effect, not just only in the family, but outside.
Yes, and when others hear this and see this, it gives other people courage to stand up to the way things, to stand up to the way things have been done, and choose to let let educators and doctors know how they really want it to be done. Louise, do you want to add anything?
Yes, I really think it is actually important to express how you feel and what is going on for your child. That does take courage. And it really is about educating other people, and in order to do that we need to speak up and let them know what it is like for these children. And I have found that they are actually open. You need to see how the teacher or the therapist feels and what's going on in the situation, and reflect it back to the therapist in a way that they will understand what's happening for your child. And it really will shift paradigms if we start to bring out the information and let people know what's happening on the level for the kids. So it does work. I think it's and it will, the more we bring it out, and it will raise the vibration of everybody to the level of the children as well. So yeah, I find people are open to it.
Great. Okay, we're running out of time, but I just want to add one more thing and get comment on it. And that is, Suzy says, in the end, we will get to see the ability of these kids to operate beyond time and space, meaning that once we shift, we will actually get to see this. So I just would like to get a comment from each of you on that, the whole topic of the kids operating beyond time and space. Meredith?
Wow. Sorry, we just shifted big gears there. I love that idea, and I love that, not just the idea, but it's a space that you enter, and it feels different. And I wish there were better words for it, but being present and kind of being in the moment is its own step outside of time and space a bit. And so, I've had amazing things happen where, in being very present and then maybe thinking of someone, we kind of have an exchange of sorts, and then to call and talk to them later. And again, this exchange may happen just on a energetic level, and then to have a conversation later and find out that there was an impact, or it was something that they noticed or felt at that same time. And And so, and it's happened, it was like me and a friend was at a seminar in California, and I was kind of praying for him in a certain way. And, you know, to have him say, you know, at this time I felt this happen, and I was like, that was when I was doing it. So, you know, that is beyond space. So we were 3,000 miles apart. And again, entering that timeless time of the present moment, you really can experience and have some amazing experiences. So.
Louise, do you have anything to contribute on that topic?
Yes, you know, it is where the magic happens, being in the moment and beyond time and space. You know, you have loads of experiences of, you may be thinking of somebody and they might ring you or email you, and they get that connection by your telepathically and by your thoughts. And it is fascinating. I loved the part where Suzy talked about you know, that the whole oak tree is in an acorn, and that the future of the world is in the spirit of these children. And, you know, that's all about time and space as well, and it's all there in the wonder and the awesomism of it all. So it's, yeah, it's wonderful to play with.
Okay, and Enely?
I really think that the way they develop and how they grow, it's just an example how they really function outside time and space. We have this linearity of the kids do this first, then do this, A, B, C, and they follow that path. And the kids that have been diagnosed, they don't follow that path. They have their own path. They have their own time. They learn things in their own time. And that's showing us how you can really perform outside what the standard society perception of time and space it is. They have a different way of perceiving it and a different way of functioning. And I think that's when the world transformation starts, when we start realizing that we can really function outside these set parameters, and we can start functioning in our own time and our own space, following their example.
Great. Well, that's a nice way to end this 5-week series. We've enjoyed the time with everyone that's participated with us. I today have enjoyed all of you and all the accents, the Irish, the Houston / Venezuelan, and the East Coast Maryland. So it's great, and these videos will continue running in the future on YouTube and Google Plus and the Awesomism website. So feel free to watch them if you haven't seen one, and watch to see what happens with Awesomism Book Club in the future. So good day to all of you, and I'll let the panelists give their goodbyes.
Bye.
Bye. It's been awesome to share this time with you.